Brewing is as much about the process as it is about the product. At its most satisfying, brewing creates a culture and a community that goes beyond beer geekdom to make deeper connections. It's about learning, sharing, and creating. It's a touchstone that can make people who've never met instantly friends. Beer with Strangers starts now.
Welcome to episode... Oh, I forgot to look. It's episode 124 of Beer with Strangers. I'm your host, Tony Russo, and I'm joined this week, as I'm joined each week by...
Hi, Doug Griffith, Stream Brewing Supplies here, and I'll start off with the weather report. Oh, it's going to get cold.
Yeah, it's brutal.
Yesterday was so nice. This is Thursday, so talk about Wednesday. Wednesday was a wonderful, wonderful day. We hit records, I think, 70-some degrees here. I know 73 in Georgetown, but it was snowing on the way over here this morning. I got up early this morning, and it was 50-some degrees, and by the time I headed this way, which was at 9:30, it was at 35, so temperature's going down.
And not only that, it was... The good thing about yesterday was it gave me time to restock all my wood. So,
So you're ready for the cold now.
Right. I did two things. I always do two things if it's a really nice day. The first thing I do is I restock the wood. But the second thing I do is I treat myself to an evening cigar outside and pretend like it's spring.
Nice last
It's
night.
absolutely gorgeous out. I got myself some Tullamore Dew. My wife called me. She's like, "I'm so sick." I'm like, "Oh baby, I'll bring you some whiskey." Right? And so I brought her some Tullamore Dew. I helped her drink it while I had my cigar out in the back. It was a splendid, splendid night. That followed a splendid, splendid day because I got out to several of the breweries yesterday, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in the show. But before we get started, let's do the classes. You guys have classes coming up here.
I got the whole list here for now. This week we've got How to Make Wine on the 11th. That's this next weekend. No, that's this weekend.
That's this weekend.
This Saturday. And next weekend, we've got mead class. That's by John Talkington, who's opening up Brimminghorn Brewery in Lewis, Delaware.
And if I can interrupt, we may do that live, but we will definitely do a video for that. So again, if you want to subscribe to the Beer with Strangers YouTube, where we might do that, it'd be a 2-hour event.
Yes.
Right.
Yes,
so it'll be a 2-hour
hours.
event, hopefully live, but definitely recorded.
And he should be open, so he says. This has been a soft opening for the last 6 months.
I know.
He's had issues with construction, but hopefully in about a month and a half, he says. So, and maybe we'll know more next weekend when he's here. So, February 25th, we're having a wine makers get together here at the shop, starting at 5 o'clock. So all you winemakers that are listening, come on out and bring some wine to taste. In March 4th, Jimmy Kroom, who is a BJCP judge, is going to give highlights of what it takes to become a beer judge. So that'd be interesting. He'll talk about what it takes and how you learn all about the different styles and what the testing's involved.
Right.
Then we're assuming March 11th, we're going to have an advanced brew session with some of the Evolution brew makers. That's going to go over what is involved in making a beer from scratch. What grains
recipe construction.
Right, recipe construction, right. And to yet be determined, we're going to have a Grainfather Brew Day here at Laurel. We've got our own Grainfather to demonstrate.
Right, and for those of you that haven't been watching, the Grainfather is an all-included brewing system, so you can do everything except ferment it right in one vessel, and it's super cool. It's super easy. You're still doing the brewing, but you're not washing as many pots when you're done.
And it's got some temperature controls to help increase the consistency of your brewing. So anyway, come and see how that's all about, and we're going to have a all-grain brew day in Millsboro. Date yet still be determined, sometime in March, we're thinking.
And those are just like huge, not huge, but they're parties really. Like they brew and they hang out and they drink beer and they brew.
And bring your beer if you want somebody to taste or you want something evaluated. We'll all taste your beer, and a lot of times very, very we'll tell you the bad or the good about it. So.
And it's cool to see all these brewers get together, all the home brewers get together, and they try one another's beers, and they're like, this is what I like about it, this is what I would do differently. But you know, as we say here, drink what you like to be happy. But if you're unsure about how your beers are coming out and you want some other people's opinions, this is the best place to get the best. Because they're honest opinions, but they're not vicious opinions. It's not like the
we
internet.
try that.
Right, everybody's always...
And we're here to help you make better beer, so...
Very cool. And me on the plug side, we do have Love on Tap coming up at Seacrets on February 25th. On February 14th, I believe, this coming on Valentine's Day is when we're going to close the contest. We're having an essay contest, and you write why you love craft beer or how you fell in love with someone over craft beer, and we're going to pick the best ones, and the best one is going to get tickets to the event as well as a night in Ocean City. So it's worth knocking out 200, 300 words just to talk about, you know, craft beer. And there are a bunch of Love on Tap events available. Lots of the local restaurants are having specials that involve craft beer and appetizers. And the idea is, you meet your special someone out for a happy hour, which is one of my favorite things to do. Happy hour is absolutely my favorite thing to do. Having my special someone with me, also not so bad. And you can check all that out on shorecraftbeer.com. If you click on the articles link, it'll take you to the happy hour specials. Also, the happy hour specials will be right on the front page. It's one of the 3 rotating main stories. All right, we all plugged up?
Yeah, all plugged up. And for those who saw or didn't see our intro today, we had a beer to taste from Netherlands, Moninel. It's a North Sea IPA, American style IPA, and it was very good. So if you get, I don't know if this is available here, but it's definitely from the Netherlands. So if you get there, by all means, get a taste of this. It's really good.
Right. We'll make sure to get a link up on it. One of the things that we're not going to talk about at length today is the Budweiser commercial, for reasons that I can't explain without screaming and drooling. So if you want to see what I really think about screaming and drooling, make sure you're following our Twitter feed. I have a blog on that coming out this afternoon or tomorrow morning. We're just trying to get it past the censors.
Oh, okay. On a more positive note,
yes, sir.
Tell us about the beers from Love on Tap.
So I've been knocking around doing different videos about all of the Love on Tap beers.
Which are 3 of them.
Which there are at least 3. There may be more. We're still waiting for some of the brewers to reach out to us. So the first one I tasted actually on February 3rd when they released it, and that was the Kohana Chocolate Cherry Stout, and that's an annual beer that they do at Third Wave. Always a pleasure to taste. And what I like about that beer particularly is that they don't have. I'm not going to say they don't have a recipe, but they don't have a set recipe. They know they're going to be chocolate, they know they're going to be cherry, and they know they're going to be stout. And then as
you got a little bit of variety.
Right, and as the brew day approaches, they choose what they're going to do. I prefer this year's to last year's, because this year's was a little bit roastier, and there was much more cocoa, much more chocolate than last year. So last year was a little bit sweeter. This year it's a dry beer, and it's a little bit bitter from chocolate. And all 3 of the beers that we're going to talk about today have chocolate. And Doug and I were talking about it before the show started. What was really interesting to me is that they're using chocolate kind of as a bittering agent.
Chocolate is bitter, except most of us have the milk chocolate, which has been sweetened.
Right.
And one thing that John from Third Wave may be doing, as it progresses, he's probably taking notes of what he made the previous year and saying, I think it needs a little tweaking here,
right,
tweak there, and that's why they're somewhat different. And he may be doing the same thing. He thinks this year's
wants to make it a little bit more. And it's such a rich beer, and it's very, very good. I drank a whole bunch of it on Friday night, and there are pictures of it. It's one of the things that I love about going to Third Wave is it's like my neighborhood place. And I'm not nuts about my neighborhood, but I really do like that Third Wave is part of it.
And you can walk home.
And I can walk home. So those are all my favorite parts. And then later in the week, I got to go out to Backshore Brewing, which is only open on the weekends, so catch them if you can. But they did their Sofa King, so we say it gently.
And if you don't know where they are, let me interrupt. They're on the boardwalk in Ocean City.
Right, on 10th Street. It says 9th Street, but it's at the corner of 10th Street and the boards. next to Hammerheads. So anyway, I got to try their stout, and that had strawberries in it, and that was another one that was really subtle. It wasn't sweet. It was the least not sweet of the three I tasted, if that makes any sense. It was a milder beer than the other two, and I'll talk about the Evo one in a second. But it was the strawberries were subtle, and I was talking with Matt and Nate there, who were kind of working on the beer, and they were trying really hard to get the strawberry flavors out without throwing like sugary extracts in. And I think they had some success. It's quietly strawberry. It's mostly chocolate, and again, you've got that. If you ever think of like they added actual Hershey's cocoa powder, and I think that's why it's a little bit sweeter than the other ones that used cocoa nibs, but I could be mistaken. But it's got that kind of dry chocolate flavor to it. But again, they're excited. They're making it for Love on Tap, and it'll be available at the 25th. And then last but not least, yesterday morning, because I'm a professional, I stopped by Evo.
Drink better beer anytime during the day, sure.
And so I stopped by Evo, and I got a chance to try their XO Stout. And now this is, I interviewed Mike Pronsky, who, if there's a development, if there's a recipe development, yeah. Mike is the likely candidate.
It's either going to be Mike or Jimmy
Sharp. But I got to sit down with Mike, and I did an interview, and I did a video, which will be out later this week on showcraftbeer.com. And he talked about, they took the Rise Up Stout recipe, and they just enhanced it. So this is a Rise Up Stout with cherry and chocolate in it. And what they did with the way that they did the chocolate is it made it all the more coffee flavored and all the more, I like chimney soot, that kind of really rich, dark beer. I don't remember the ABV. I'll bet it's hovering in the 8% range. It felt like a big beer.
Well, it sounds like whether you pick any of them, they're good.
Oh, they were all really good. So if you get out to now Evo is only going to have theirs in the tap room. I believe Third Waves is available at some breweries, and Backshore obviously is only going to be available in the tap room as well. So if you can't get to the tap room and you want to come down to the festival, they'll all be at the festival. But these are all small batches.
That's the 25th this month.
That's the 25th on
February.
Yeah, February. So that way I get extra points from the state. All right. So now we're going to move to the news. And actually, as long as we're talking about all these stouts, why don't we start with the winter warmers? Did you get a chance to look at that? So this is a great day to talk about winter warmers.
So some of what you had were winter warmers because the alcohol is up. Hence the warming effect of those winter warmers.
So I try to listen to these shows, so hopefully I can make them better. And yesterday I was listening to one I did with Sean where we tried the Millennium Ale, and that was a barley wine. And Sean referred to it as a winter warmer because it's like an 11% beer, and he was starting to sweat. and you can feel it. It's a nice way to spend the cold weather, especially when there's like a wet chill in the air. Do you have any that you prefer? Any?
No, I can't say that I do, but I do like some of the higher alcohols occasionally this time of year. Just they're generally very malty flavored and rich tasting, similar to what the Love on Tap beers that you were talking about.
Yeah,
now, they don't always have to be dark, but some of them are light. That's just the style. But they're barley wines, or there's all kinds of different names that they're given to them. Imperial Pale, Imperial Stouts. I saw
an Imperial Goza.
Okay.
I don't know what that's all about.
It goes it down good.
It goes it down just fine. But that was awful. So the way you know it's a winter warmer is that it's got a higher alcohol content, and it's not meant for drinking a lot of. It's meant for enjoying a sipper quietly when you are.
Generally, they're 8% or above, and can be as high as what's the Scottish one that's 60-something% alcohol.
Yeah,
the outrageously.
The one from the Brewdog folks. Yeah. I don't recall the name.
Most of them are 8 to 12%.
So check one out. This is the perfect week to get out and get one. The ones off the top of my head, I know that Evo has Kathy That's their big imperial Russian imperial stout. And of course, again, if you can get the Kohana any place, go ahead and get that for tasting from Third Wave. And so while we're talking about what do we say that almost matched the next story? I do not know. So we'll just keep on going. So Chinese beer.
Oh yes, reminiscent of some of our ancient ales that we're getting from Dogfish. That's one that they say they've done the same thing that Patrick McGovern's done. They just found a dig somewhere and they took scrapings from something, a vat or a bottle of some sort, probably ceramic.
Right, so the literal dregs.
So, and then they've come up with a list of ingredients, and it was pretty neat, I thought, that this archaeologist took it back to their students, and the students, everybody kind of went at it a different way, and they came up with 4 or 5 different, some not so good, and some that were better than others.
Right,
so,
absolutely. And one of the things
great.
Well, you guys also have contests like that where you say, here are the very general rules about what to make. So it's cool for everybody to get a chance to try and make their own beers. But what I wanted to mention about that I thought was just as interesting was one of the things that it came out was that they were making beer with barley about 1,000 years before they were making food with it. Yeah. So the idea, the hypothesis is that the beer had come from elsewhere and people had taught the Chinese how to make beer, or the Chinese had begun making beer and just thought of barley as something you make beer with. Like something for malting and making beer with. So they weren't using it as one of their cereals. Obviously, rice is the most important cereal in China. Right. And one wonders whether rice would be as important if they had started making barley cereal
1,000 years earlier.
Right, 1,000 years earlier. But we'll
there's always the hypothesis of why these things are occurring, and maybe they just didn't have the land to grow barley on, or they just didn't have enough seed because they were using it all for
rice.
Beer.
Yeah, for beer. Yeah. The other thing I wanted to talk about, we skipped over the homebrew section, so I'd like to go back to that.
Okay.
We posted a story earlier this week, and again, you can find all of our stories on the SureCraftBeer.com, which has a list of the different articles we'll be covering this week. But the one that we do about homebrew is called Water and Mash. And my first question is, does anybody ever use distilled water? That would be bad to use distilled water, right?
Well, you can. It depends upon what kind of water you've got. Usually city water is fine, except it has chlorine in it, and if you just bring it up to your temperature that you need, most of that chlorine will boil off, and then you've got whatever's left in it, the minerals that you're looking for, and the pH generally is acceptable in the range generally. But if you've got crappy well water, then distilled water is an option that you can add minerals to, or just spring water generally is very good to use also. So you can just use spring water and then brew from there.
Now, do you guys do something where, like, do you have, like, I don't know, iodine droplets? Would you have, like, pills or stuff that people can throw in the water?
No, you can check. Well, you got test strips.
Like you have for the pool.
Right. And it tells you what the pH is, and you can adjust it from there.
Now, that's what how do you go about adjusting the pH?
Different salts. You can use gypsum, which is a typical one most people add, but we've got a couple other ones. We've got a product called 5-2 from 5 Star. It's a powder that's supposed to be added and give you 5.2% pH. Plus we've got lactic acid and phosphoric acid for those who want to
make it more
chemically, change it. So, but for extract brewers, any water that doesn't have any taste in it or odor is generally acceptable, because with extracts, the maltster, the guy who has made the malt and extracted the sugars out of the malt, all the work's done.
He took into account, his assumption is you're using spring water or something very like spring water. But
yeah, it doesn't, as long as it smells and tastes good, it doesn't really matter. The pH is not going to matter because you're going to go into a boil. You really don't do the conversion of starches into sugars because that's already been done for you. Mm-hmm.
But for all
grain, it becomes more of an issue. Now, you can either try to change it to what you need, or just live with what it's got. Sometimes just living with it is easier than trying to change it. Some chemistry of the water will accentuate different parts, such as hops or malt. But if you use what you got and consistently use what you got, you
then
can
it
have
always
the same
tastes
result.
the same, exactly. And you can, it's I guess especially for a home brewer, it'd be easier to adjust the recipe a little bit than adjust the water a lot every time you want to brew.
And are certain regions in the world that make certain beers because of the
way
water.
the water is.
They found that water made this beer great, and that's what they made. So it's either try to change it and get into all the chemistry that's needed, or just do it with what you got. If you're making halfway decent beers, it will be consistent, should be.
Very cool. The other thing that I wanted to talk about this week is I posted a story about wine tastings and people who like stand in the liquor store doing wines. They also do that with beer, and I think that that's one of the best ways to kind of get...
And spirits.
And spirits, yes. And that's I think one of the best ways to get your message out there as like a craft.
Yeah, I was surprised. They talk about 30 to 60% increase in sales if you do in-store tastings.
Yeah, well, so let's say it's 60% because that's fun. 45 of that 60% is because they usually have like a cute girl, you know.
Of course.
Yeah. But I mean, sometimes
that's assuming most guys are going in. Right?
Absolutely right. But sometimes it's Matt Funk. I've been there are companies that'll do it for you. But if you're doing it yourself, you just make better contact, and people like I know I've been to two. I've seen them out in the wild twice. Once I went to my local liquor store, and Matt Funk from Dogfish was there.
It personalizes that brewery a little bit better.
Absolutely, it's like
here.
I'm from here,
yeah,
and I want you to taste my beer. Yeah. And the other time it was Tracy Huggins again from Third Wave, and you know they're out there making contacts. They know about the brewery. They know about anybody can tell you what the ABV and the style is, but knowing like where it came from and why they like it.
And I think it's great, especially if you're in your 100 miles from
absolutely
the brewery requirement.
Right.
Then it makes it all that more, I'm a local person, I'm so many miles away, and if you're in the area, stop by and have a beer with us there.
Yeah, I want to support local beer, so it's a great thing to do. So if you see them out in the liquor stores, even if you're not a craft beer drinker, go by and get a tasting because A, it's free. And B, they might, sometimes if you hear why they like it, you might be able to find why you like it as well. I mean, that's how most people who can talk about beer didn't read it in a book. They hung out with people. I'm fortunate. I've got Doug, so I'm like, oh, what does this taste like? And he says what it tastes like. And then the next time I just repeat what I learn how to taste it based on how everybody else talks about how it tastes. It's a great way to learn, and it's a great way to get involved. And there are worse things to get involved with than tasting craft beer all the time.
I have a question. Maybe you know.
Okay.
All right. So I've seen wine tastings here in Delaware. Can they do beer tastings also in Delaware?
Yeah.
Okay. How about spirits?
Yeah.
Oh.
I mean, they've had them at the liquor store by me, and I across the street from. I live in Maryland, but just barely. So at the
in the Delaware side.
Yeah, and I've had the spirit tastings.
And Maryland's also can do the same thing?
Right,
okay.
Yeah. And it's funny because now I have to tell you what a hypocrite I am, because sometimes if they're tasting something that I know is going to be gross, I'm like they're like, do you want to try this cotton candy vodka? And I'm like, no, I don't. I don't want to waste. I don't want to have to be polite to you after I taste your cotton candy vodka. I don't want to have to say like, and then walk away. So
I've had some of that because I've had a friend who's taken me to the Ocean City Restaurant Association at the convention center, and you get all of those flavored vodkas and all the beers and everything that anybody may want. Yeah, you're welcome to taste them.
Yeah, and that's coming up. If you actually, my day job is at oceancity.com. So if you follow oceancity.com on all the social stuff, we'll let you know when that comes up. That's a really fun event to go to. I've been,
and not only the booze, but they got food too.
They've got food. They've got all sorts of stuff. I usually skip. Even there, I'll skip the things that I won't like. But what I remember the most about that was the first place I got to try really, really high end tequila, and I found out that tequila was something that had nice flavors, and I've only recently discovered mezcal, and I don't know how so I think I don't know if this is my first taste of mezcal came with the worm. I think that's super good luck. But so I got to eat the worm, and I didn't hallucinate or anything. But I got to eat the worm. I got to try the mezcal.
From what I remember, between the two, the mezcal and tequila, it's just the agave is a different agave that's made from.
Right, and it's regulated differently. Tequila is like champagne that way. Like tequila has to come from tequila, and it has to be made of very specific agave plants. Mezcal,
more generic.
Right, it can come from any place in Mexico, and it can come from different kinds of agave. And don't get me. There are all sorts of regulations actually they're working on to try to make mezcal more consistent, and I'm against that because they're doing a lot of really interesting craft things with mezcal, and you can find that on the internet. You don't have to listen to me about it, but if you want it, give me a holler. I'll talk to you all day about the mezcal problems. The next thing, speaking of problems and regulation, there was a great article, and I'm usually not a huge fan of the Gannett products, but somebody really did a good story about how beer grows and why it's leveling off in some places and growing in other places. And this particularly was in Ohio, and the notion was that Ohio doesn't have a lot of craft breweries, so it's got plenty of room for growth. But places like, I don't know, California might not have a ton of room for growth. Colorado, probably not a lot of room left for growth.
But I thought it was interesting. I think they said that 80% of the U.S. population lives within 10 miles of a craft brewery.
Yeah.
That to me is pretty amazing.
Yeah, and I mean, I live within 10 miles of like 4, you know? And I guess so, but I guess in Colorado, everyone lives within 10 miles of 3 or 12, I guess, right? So here on the shore, I mean, I don't have any objection to more breweries, but I feel like we probably hit our peak with production breweries. I would love to see more brew pubs. I would love to see a brew pub on every block. But I don't know how many more distribution breweries.
Well, they were talking about that article. Noted that it was going to be more and more difficult for it's like third wave to go across state lines. It becomes more and more problematic expanding outward
because everyone's kind of bumping up against one another.
Because for them to grow, somebody else is going to have to decline.
Right.
It's assuming that the market is getting pretty saturated with beers.
Right. So again, that's why it's important to drink at your local place to make sure that they're making their own beer. I have a story coming out in March in this magazine called Edible Delmarva. But one of the things I'm going to talk about is that Third Wave is actually adding a canning facility. So real excited about that. We'll be able to get more of their beer in cans. And here at the beach, that's an important thing because if you're a local place and you're canning, just as we were saying with Dogfish a couple weeks ago.
I think just shows the importance with Dogfish going from bottles, which they've done for the last 20 years, to cans this year, that they recognize the fact that they're losing market share because of not having it in cans.
Right. People just like cans.
And the first one they did was 60 Minute, which is their top seller.
Yeah, so. and we tasted both. We tasted the Blood and Flesh IPA, and the second that's out, you should grab it because it's really, really. I think when you crack it open, you get orange zest in your nose or something. We were talking about
flesh and blood, isn't it?
Yeah, what did I say? Blood and flesh.
Yeah, flesh and blood.
It was that 6 ounces of beer I had went right to my head. Okay, we're coming up toward the end here. Got a couple more things that we want to talk about. What I want to talk about is the recipe. If you guys would like to reach out and let us know any recipes that you have that you would like us to share, we're happy to share it. I'm I'm almost certainly going to start making some of the recipes that we publish every week on the blog. Because we have a bunch of really good recipes, and it always just says, throw in a stout or throw in a Belgian or something like that. So what I want to do is I want to choose some local beers and cook with them and see if I can tweak the different flavors. The only trouble with that is that do I look like a guy who needs 6 different pies around his house?
Pick a recipe a month and try 4 different beers in that recipe.
Absolutely, but I don't know if I need 4 pies a month. There was a couple weeks ago we published the cream pie, the porter cream pie. Yeah, I really want to try that. And today's recipe, if you get a chance to look, is even better. It's caramelized apple and onion tarts made with Belgian beer. And again, to make something with Belgian beer that's such a wide open
It's just like, say, an American IPA.
Right. There are so many different tastes. So the 2 things we're asking of you guys is, thing number 1, if you're interested in seeing video, because I can make videos of it or I can just do it. If you want me to make a video of it, just let me know, because videos take a really long time to make and edit, and if nobody wants to see my stupid red head making pies, then I'm not going to bother. But if you also have any recipes that you'd like us to share, or you'd like us to investigate, or if you look at one of the recipes back on the website that has a generic beer and you want to tell us which beer you think would be good in it, just let us know. You can reach out to me at shorecraftbeer.com. There's a contact form. Or you can find me socially at my name backwards, which is OSSURYNOT. If you're watching this on our Facebook page, of course, it's important to remember that you can subscribe to this podcast on either iTunes or Android, whatever, Google Play, by searching Beer with Strangers on iTunes or in the Google Play Store. Or if you go to the beerwithstrangers.com, at the top of each episode is the play bar, and below each play bar is a place where you can click to subscribe to the show, and that way you get it every week. I'll probably have this out tonight. If not, I'll have it out. I usually have it out late Thursday night, early Friday morning, or sometimes I forget altogether and put it out on Sunday. But usually
Thursday night.
Yeah, usually Thursday night, often Friday morning. Okay, like last week, I came home and I edited it, and then I forgot all about it. And then somebody sent me a note, and they're like, no podcast this week? I'm like, I did that Thursday. And I looked, I'm like, yes, but you didn't hit upload. So no
minor detail.
So we do what we can. And again, if you're ever interested in having a beer class, a private beer class or a personal beer class, if you get four or more of your friends together, you can reach out to Doug here at extremebrewing.com. And with or without the E, it's extremebrewing.com. And you can have a class. They'll do a class, and they'll teach 4 or more of you how to brew. It's a great way to spend an afternoon. I hope to get
or an evening. We'll do it in the evening after us. Usually start at 6 and go to about 8 or 8:30 in the evening. So just let us know.
Yeah, it's a great way. There's snacks, there's beer, there's all sorts of fun stuff. So I think that'll do it. So until next week,
drink what you like and be happy.
All right, we'll see you, folks.